Well, good Sunday morning, everyone. It's very quiet out this morning. People are sleeping in. I think even the birds are sleeping in this morning. Normally by now they are a little bit more raucous, especially my beloved cardinals. At any rate, I love that expression. You may hear me say it frequently in my videos. At any rate, my dad used to use that expression all of the time. So every time I use it, I think of him, which might be why I use it a lot. So at any rate, several of you have commented that I haven't done a walkabout in a while. So here it is. Grab your cup of coffee or tea or chai or your beverage of choice. A Bloody Mary, if you drink Bloody Marys this early in the morning. And let's take a stroll. It's going to be steamy and hot, though not quite as warm this week as last week. And I'm kind of proud of myself because yesterday I finished up all of my potting. Those of you who joined me at my potting bench, you'll know I did a whole lot of potting yesterday. And by the way, someone commented that they noticed that I did not bleach the insides of my pots, that I just went immediately from one pot planting into the other. And normally I do that. I'm not maybe as fastidious as I should be, but I've never had a problem with that procedure. And also, I don't want to bleach off any of that beautiful moss that has taken me so long to grow on the exterior of the pot. So that's why I don't. Now, that said, if the plant that I was transferring out of that pot had any kind of issues, be they fungal, pest, disease, anything of that nature, then of course I would practice my due diligence and clean out the inside of the pot. And whoever brought that to my attention, I appreciate it. It was conveyed in a very loving way. Here is a fun thing that I'll be talking about a lot more later. My new obsession with scented geraniums. So I potted up 3 of them yesterday, and I set it inside this fire grate, which is not getting a lot of use right now. Not too many cool evenings. I will address this on FAQ Friday, but I think 3 people have asked about where I got that lantern. And actually, that is just an interesting branch that I spray painted black, and that is a black wrought iron fence hanger that, interestingly enough, came with the house 30 years ago. They were hanging on the fence, and then the lantern itself is a hand-me-down. And here's the clean out area that I did not too long ago. I'll try to remember, if you didn't see me cleaning out this area and how awful it was before, I'll try to put a link to that video. Sometimes by the time I get to the end of the description, I've forgotten what I have promised to link, but you all typically keep me honest. So with the exception of my lithely blower that I forgot to put up, I have pretty much put everything away. And for the first time in a while, the back looks pretty tidy. I still have a few more pots out than I would normally have. For example, if this were a garden tour, or a real in-life, in-the-flesh garden tour, which I can't wait to start having again once we get through this crazy time in history. Sorry for the camera shake there. I had a little bug on my nose. And there's my little work table that I also forgot to put up. I see a few boxwood globes that need to be clipped. But, and there's a really good example, everyone, of a very strongly clipped boxwood ball there in front of one that is not strongly clipped. And that Dystillium that's there in that black pot, here's a little tease. I'm going to print it up and show you. It's got a beautiful trunk on it, and how I hope to make it look a little bit more topiaried, if that's a verb. Every year, it seems that certain plants have a good year or a bad year, and I would say that for the hydrangeas, the oak leaf hydrangeas in my garden, it wasn't necessarily a good year because it got too hot too fast, and they didn't put on their entire size on the flower heads before they just started turning brown. It got just inordinately hot very, very fast. But for other things, it was a very good year. So those are the fun things to record in your garden journal. What things in your garden for which it was a spectacular year? And this year I would say that snowball viburnum, which is still putting out some blooms. It was and usually is a spectacular year. Here is this corner that I redid. I think I told everyone I was getting ready to clean up this corner a little bit. And I did. It looks much tidier now with just little hints of color. I still have to do a video showing how I prune my hollies, which is a no-brainer. It's so easy. And by the way, somebody yesterday said, do I think I'm the only person, or I'm the first person that ever discovered gravel and using it as a mulch on pots? And everything that I show is just so simple. Kind of like one of these, who did I think I was? Well, I don't think I'm anybody other than a self-taught gardener. And I guess I would respond, have you never heard the concept of new gardeners who are learning or constantly learning, or in my case, experienced gardeners who may not be formally taught but constantly need to be reminded of best practices in the garden? So to him, I would say you need another cup of coffee, and I hope you have a better day than the way it started out. So glad to have all of this repotting done of all of my rosemaries. I even repotted some of my myrtle topiary, and I haven't done a myrtle topiary video in a long time, and there's kind of some new developments that I want to share with you. There is a spot of color that wasn't there before, a crepe myrtle. And by the way, for all of those of you who have asked if I would show how to prune a crepe myrtle, I will do that. It's on my list. My list is growing longer. There's all those scented geraniums. I repotted all of them and kind of pinched some of them back. And I'll talk a lot more about that later. Here are some beautiful, one of the reasons I love white wedding hydrangeas, that one suffered some storm damage, so it's a little wonky. But they're just now putting out blooms. Or have been, I guess, for the past week. And it's one of the reasons I really like white wedding, because they bloom later. They're a southern living plant. And you'll notice that the color palette, as always, is very restricted, tiny little pops of color. This time of year, I'm so glad I don't have a whole lot of it, because even though color is nice, I think in my small garden, it could be a little bit overwhelming, especially if I had lots of different colors. That is for maybe larger gardens than mine. I just find it a more sophisticated look with a limited color palette and just little pops of color. Look at that sweet little bird. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll see a cardinal. I've had more cardinals this year than ever before. I'm not sure what that's about, but I am not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Actually 2 people mentioned yesterday, one of them my good friend Laura in New Jersey, who said that I had, not all of the time, but they said I had a relaxing voice and that they'd been able to fall asleep listening to one of my videos. And I thought, I don't know if I take that as a compliment or not. But she said it was in a very sweet way, but someone else did too. And to both of them, I thank you for sharing that. When my boys were little, whenever they were stressed, or even after they got to be preteens, maybe even in their teen years, if they would get really stressed about something, about school or friend drama or really anything, if I wanted to relax them, I would put on those old Harry Potter tapes that were so brilliantly narrated by a British actor, and it would calm them almost immediately. This is what happens when you allow a scented geranium to really get large. And this is in full sun. My friend Monica, and on LVTV, we're going to do a deep dive into scented geraniums and different ways to use them. But she is the expert, and each one has a different fragrance, and each fragrance is better than the one before. Increasingly, as I get older, fragrance as an element, as essential element in the garden is becoming more and more important to me. Sorry for the glare of the sun there. So there's one variety in that basket and another variety in this basket, peppered, sorry for my finger there in the corner, peppered with a little bit of gold coleus. And another plant that I don't believe I've shown you in bloom is this wonderful shrimp plant. Someone told me its botanical name and I can't remember, but I'm so glad this was one of those things that at the end of the year I thought, I'm going to try to overwinter that in the greenhouse. And I did, and it has just performed beautifully. And there is that golden smoke tree in the pot that has now converted to green, which it does when it gets hot. When it starts putting out new growth again in the fall, that will be a very golden yellow. There's my hose end sprayer. I forgot to put it up too. This is a real life, real garden. And that Woodgelia over there is putting out those coral flowers. Lovely little color echo. Everything is in that kind of pinky coral shrimp color. There's the birds. Now let's go into the potager. And by the way, some people are not familiar with the term potager, and it is a French term for an ornamental kitchen garden. And it literally translates, ooh, the dogs are up too. It literally translates into soup garden. But it's an ornamental vegetable garden. And on Instagram, my handle is Potager Blog, because it was my potager that I guess it was, I think, the first thing that Southern Living magazine shot. And it just was what I guess was a turning point for me in gardening. I already was beginning to love it. But starting this potager just put me over the top. Let me give you a little progress on, look at my tomatoes. all of those just came up. They were just volunteers, and I transplanted them in there. Once they start getting large, I'll have to keep an eye on them because they will start blocking out light to the boxwood, but they will give Hubs and myself more than enough little tomatoes for our needs. I love those flower heads on the dill. And so do the pollinators. My goodness, it's had all sorts of tiny little bees later in the day. Like hanging out at the water cooler, they will all congregate there. A couple of you sent me some wonderful videos on growing figs. As you know, I've mentioned that I'm starting to get into figs a little bit more. And two of you kindly sent me a couple of videos which I have watched. They're very helpful. Right now, I'm leaving them alone because I just love those massive leaves, and I want the leaves to just keep getting larger and larger for a project that I've got going. Now, I came upon, this is so exciting to me, I came upon, when I was cleaning out my office, an accidental treasure trove. Some CDs of really old segments that I did with Linda Kavanaugh on Channel 4 on For Your Garden, like from 8 to 10, maybe even 12 years ago. And what I love about them is you can see how different my garden looked then than it looks now. So for all of you who are interested in those kinds of flashbacks, I think I'll be putting them up on LVTV for a regular segment we'll call Throwback Thursday, and you can see what the garden looked like in the past. In video, not just in stills. And the other thing I don't want to fail to mention, several of you have said that, oh, you'll so miss me on Instagram or on YouTube when I start LVTV. But I'm going to continue to try to put as much content, it might decline a little bit, but as much content as I have in the past on those two platforms, in addition to LVTV, which will be much more of an expanded deep dive into things in a garden-centered lifestyle besides just gardening. You guys can subscribe for $9.99, cancel at any time. And it's a nice way, I think, to be part of what I hope will be a really united, kind of exclusive little community of those of us who share the same passions. And it will also be a way to support our efforts, because it does cost more to shoot videos like that, better equipment, and it's just nice to support, I think, channels that provide you content. Over the years, I have provided lots of content for free. My little gift to the gardening world. And the other thing is so that you know, real life, real time, I am self-taught, so I'm constantly learning, constantly making mistakes. I have some jalapenos on my pepper plants. I don't know if I can show them to you or not, but that need to be picked. And then I want to show you some of the rewards of repotting plants that are pot bound. Last week I upsized, and I still need to kind of do something to treat the pots, but they're black and they kind of just fade in the background. I upsized these two Silverado sages into larger pots, and my reward is that, number one, they are so much happier, but number two, they are putting on all sorts of flower buds. You can see them there. And those will turn into the sweetest fuchsia blossoms. and then I'll shear them back again. I've had these, gosh, I don't even know how long. They actually came, I think, if I can remember back that far, they came in topiary form. And I just have kept them over the years. I've lost a lot of topiary, but I have a lot of topiary that have hung in there with me. And I love how full this border looks. I hardly have to plant anything in this border anymore to get this delicious gray-green effect that I've talked about in other videos. And all of these plants, for the most part, are fragrant. I've got a friend, my friend Jeannie, and she says, in her mind, a plant is hardly worth planting unless it has fragrance. That's how important fragrance is to her. And she is a wonderful gardener and also a very generous gardener, and has been a wonderful horticultural mentor to me over the years. All that rosemary, just yummy. Let me give you a little update on my herb trough. You can see I planted some scented geraniums in that box. This was a box that I've had for a long time that when I got it had amaryllis in it. I think I got it from Whole Foods. And there's lots of basil in here. In fact, some plants are starting to bully the other plants, and I need to tame them. In the corner, I just planted some lemon verbena, but all this stuff is starting to get a lot larger. I can't wait for it to fill out completely and be a beautiful composition. Well, there is a little Sunday tour. I guess I need to tour the front yard. But while the light was soft, and because I hadn't done one in a while, and because you guys don't seem to tire of seeing how even a small garden can change over time, then I think it's fun to revisit it. I want you to feel like it's your own. And you can see how it matures and evolves over time. Have a wonderful Sunday, everyone. The dill bids you farewell. Be safe and be well.